Hey there, Sart here, bringing you the next video in my top 20 series. I'm going to be bringing you the top 20 STMRs. I'm also going to do, at the end, I'll do a little top 10 TMRs as well. I don't want this one to be too long. I know the last one was bumping up on 2 hours, and that's a pretty long video. And you know, not only is it long for you guys to have to sit through, but it's very long for me. And man, by the end of the last one, my voice was gone. I had to take a little break, a little rest after that one. But feeling, you know, voice is back now. And ready to do this next video for you. A couple of things to keep in mind before we get started. First of all, you know, this is totally my personal opinion. You may agree with it, you may disagree with some of the things that you see on the list. I am, of course, biased towards my personal play style and the ways that I like to play the game. And so, you know, you may have some disagreements, and that's perfectly fine. Your opinions are valid as well. And so it goes with any video where people are, you know, saying, oh yeah, these are the best units or, you know, items or whatnot. You know, it's always in the eye of the beholder. So just keep that in mind. You know, hopefully this would just be a nice, handy reference for some STMRs that you guys can keep in your inventory. Personally, I think all of the things I've listed here are useful STMRs and TMRs to keep in your inventory. Another thing is that I am not going to be including any like limited STMRs or TMRs in the lists. So everything on this list will be from units that you can pull from the general pool and you can potentially get at any time. So nothing on this list will be limited. I kept all those off the list. There are some really powerful limited TMRs and STMRs out there that, you know, definitely, you know, should be on a top 20 list, but for the purposes of this video, I am not going to include them. Okay? One last thing. This is not a ranking video, so to speak. All of the things on this list I think are important to have in the inventory, and it's really hard to rank STMRs because, you know, there's so many different situations where they could be useful, and, you know, it's entirely situational. And so despite the order that they come in, just ignore the order in which the items or that the STMRs come in. That has nothing to do with whether one is better than the other. All right, so these are all just valuable STMRs that you should be on the lookout for. And yeah, so with that, let's go ahead and get to it and start with our top 20 list. All right, I'm going to start with an oldie but goodie. Durandal is from 7-Star Van, also known as Seeker of Freedom Van, as you can see in the window here. And when this one came out, it was really highly coveted. It was sought after because back in the day when 7-Star Van came out, you know, the evasion meta was really big. You know, everyone was trying to build evasion tanks or evasion provoke units or, you know, full evasion teams and whatnot, and this STMR was really good for that. Nowadays, you know, that's not quite as important, but I think it's still an important STMR to have in your inventory. And for this reason, so it's a sword, which a lot of units can equip swords. So it's a widely sort of equipable weapon. Most units can equip them. If they don't, you know, there are ways to do equip sword on your units. But it's really nice because it comes with 30% evasion and 30% provoke. So if you're trying to build a passive provoke unit and you don't have, for example, the Dancer's Diadem of Will, if you have Dancer's Diadem, maybe this one doesn't interest you as much. But for newer players or players that haven't acquired quite as much Clash of Wills gear, this can still be incredibly useful for building your your evade provoke unit. And so I still think it's an important weapon to have in your inventory, even if you're not necessarily trying to make them a provoke unit. It's still got 30% evasion on it. So for support units, if you're trying to build you know, your support units for evasion, in Clash of Wills it's really common to use a 50% accuracy reduction, but then making sure all your units have 50% evasion. That's one of those items that really helps you get there. Now it's also really cool because it's one of those important pieces in making a 100% provoke unit. So you've got 30% provoke from the Durandal, you use a Moogle charm, and then you can use a TMR that I'm going to mention later on my TMR list to add another 20% provoke and 20% evasion. That TMR being Danger Gets the Blood Pumping, which is from Avalanche Jesse. I'll mention it later on. With those three things, boom, you've got a unit at 100% passive provoke and 50% evasion right off the bat. So, you know, that's a pretty cool little combo with just three things, this sword included. That's a pretty neat little thing to have going for it. So that's why Durandal makes my list. Now, speaking of evasion gear, Crimson Butterfly is another very valuable STMR to have on your list, which comes from Mastermind Zahn. He is a 7-star max, so a 5-star base. So you can use a unit of choice ticket to get Mastermind Zahn. If you have 10 UOCs, if you have 18 UOCs, then you can get him in the Prism, and then he's an easily acquirable unit for a pretty nice STMR that goes a long way to helping out with physical evasion. So you can see, much like Durandal, this one comes with 30% physical evasion. So you combine this with Durandal and you have 60% physical evasion right off the bat, meaning you only need to find 40% elsewhere in the kit. So that alone can make it really, really nice. But this comes with an extra little perk in that it can enable dual wield. This is really great for support units that don't have dual wield in their kit innately, but you might want to put 2 high evasion weapons on them, like for example Crimson Butterfly and Durandal. And so this is a really nice STMR to have that really helps making units, building up units for high evasion. And so that can be very useful in Clash of Wills. It can be useful if you're trying to build an evade provoke unit, or if you're trying to build an evade provoke team. Now, I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to get a whole bunch of these. With this one and Durandal, I'd say you want at least one, but a couple of them probably wouldn't hurt, again, because they're weapons that most units can equip. Tons of units in the game can equip daggers. It's one of those very easily equipable weapons. So just an easy source of 30% physical evasion. So that's why Crimson Butterfly makes my top 20 STMR list. So we're kind of keeping with the evasion theme here to get started with, and Sea Dragon is arguably the best evasion materia that you can get, with 30% physical evasion on it. Also comes with some nice resist with 30% water and wind resist, and if you're putting it on a DPS unit, it gives them some nice attack as well. So it's a nice one to use if you're trying to build up your DPS unit, your physical DPS, of course, and you want to give them a bit of extra evasion. This is a really nice materia to have. It comes from the original Kaito, the 7-star version, not the Neovision version. All right, so there you go. There he is. This is another really nice one to have. And again, if you're needing to build your units for evasion, for Clash of Wills, for example, or for other trials and other needs, of course evasion is still really popular in Dark Visions, especially for like the provoke unit, or even building the whole team. So this is another great STMR for building up your evasion for your whole team, and it comes with a couple of extra perks to go along with it, and that's why Sea Dragon makes my top 20 STMRs. All right, switching gears here. Sylvie's sword is a really incredible weapon. Not only does it come with really high bulk, with 200 defense and 220 spirit and 500 HP, it's got some nice elemental resists and a really unique ability attached to it that anybody can use. And so Sylvie's sword is a very unique and I think a very important STMR for people to have, and it could potentially be very, very useful for to have multiple copies of this one, specifically for that unique ability. Now, this is of course a weapon that is designed mainly for tanks and support units. You're not going to be putting this on your DPS units because it has no attack or mag on it. But of course it's great on Sylvie, because with Sylvie it gives her all this flat defense and spirit. That's of course limited to Sylvie. But some of the things that are not limited to Sylvie are elemental resists, which are very, very nice to have on your weapons. 15% across the board with 30% to lightning, earth, and light. And so that's really, really nice to have on a weapon. And so having multiple copies of this can be very, very good for building elemental resistance for your teams, which is becoming more and more important in things like Clash of Wills, where you need your team to have high elemental resistances for particular attacks that are, unavoidable, essentially, or uncoverable, I mean. And so anything with elemental resists like this, especially with all that defense and spirit on it, is really, really good. But to add the icing, the cherry on top here is this ability, Not So Fast, which is a low-cost active ability, only costs 10 MP, which is really nice, and it removes attack and mag buffs from the enemy. And this is really cool because that's usually the one thing you definitely want to remove. Of course, you want to remove defense and spirit. I think that would make it too powerful. But in a lot of instances, the enemy will put up an attack or a mag buff, and you want to get rid of that as soon as possible. Now, Sylvie can triple cast this ability when it's equipped to her. Other units, of course, they won't be able to triple cast it, so they'll just have to, use up their turn using it. But man, in a pinch, this can really save your life. All right, and so I think this sword is really, really powerful on support units, and I think honestly it would be a good idea to have more than one if you can. So if you pulled more than one Paladin Sylvie, I would definitely Moogle a couple of these swords for your support units. All right, and that's why it makes my top 20 list. And Sylvie just keeps on giving, doesn't she? Even in her 7-star form. So this is the original Sylvie's STMR, Spring Basket, which is a light shield with 95 defense and 194 spirit, which is a lot, especially in the era of, TDH. And so, that can get inflated really, really quickly. And using this on, the new Neovision Sylvie, for example, is really, really great because it's got the high spirit on it. It gives an extra 10% HP and an MP, and then for Sylvie herself gives an extra HP and MP to it. But it also comes with great elemental resist. Now the 5% across the board's that's nothing really to write home about, but the 50% to lightning, earth, and light, that is huge. All right, so anytime I see anything that's providing multiple 50% or higher elemental resists, I want those, right? I want a lot of things that have elemental resists, because again, these days, especially in Clash of Wills, your team is needing to bulk up their elemental resistances for uncoverable attacks and things like that, and that things like this just make that so much easier. So yeah, I think 7-star Sylvie's STMR is still really, really good, and it's definitely worth picking up. So we're going to continue the theme of elemental resistances for a bit, and Knight's Metal is a really, really nice one to have. It comes from Awakened Rain, which is a pretty old unit, easily UOC-able. You probably already have a bunch sitting in your unit inventory that you didn't even realize were sitting in there, and yeah, fusing up a bunch of these is definitely a good idea, because look at that. 30% resistances across the board. That is really nice, and on an accessory no less. So anybody can equip it. You can equip 2 of them, meaning 60% resistances across the board for a single unit that equips 2 of these. And, you know, to boot, the stats on it aren't that bad. Now, they're not meta, of course, but, you know, 30 attack, mag, defense, spirit, that's not bad. And honestly, you can get away with, if it means your units are going to survive, even a DPS unit, if it means the survival of your DPS unit, you know, your DPS can't deal damage if they die, right? And so if it means having the resistances in your DPS unit that allow them to survive, to deal the damage, to finish the fight, then this is really huge. And I think this is still a really, really great STMR. It's readily available. They even gave one away during an item world event. So you might even have one in your inventory. You didn't even realize it from an item world a few months ago. But yeah, I would definitely try and get I would definitely stack these up. Like, you know, go through your inventory, look and see if you have a bunch of awakened drains that you haven't even noticed, and yeah, try and fuse those up and see how many of these you can get. I think they are very, very valuable in this day and age, and it's going to be valuable for a long time to come. That's why it makes my top 20 list. Staying with elemental resists, I think Luka's Valentine recipe is probably one of my favorites as far as elemental resists are concerned. And yeah, it's really nice for you know, bulking up your units. If the resists match 60% to water, wind, and light, that's huge. You know, the general rule of thumb is if you have, you know, 3 or more resistances at 50 or higher, that is something you should be going after, right? So, you know, 30% across the board, like on Knight's Metal, is definitely good. Anything around there or better is highly coveted. And then, you know, 50% or higher on 3 or more, that's definitely good. And this one's nice because it also comes with some extra spirit and HP. I have a lot of these because, I mean, I've just pulled a ton of sweet Lukas before. You know, I mean, she's a 5-star unit. I've pulled tons of them. But every time I get, you know, I get 4 sweet Lukas. Every time I've gotten my 4th one, I go in and I immediately make another one of these STMRs. This is one of those that I have a lot of. They're great for building up resistances for the team. There are other ones that are very similar, things like Cool Beauty and Beach Girls. I think those are 2 more that are very similar to Luka's Valentine's recipe, just with different elemental resistances. And so those are definitely, you know, close, and I would kind of group them together with Luka's Valentine's recipe. So look for those. You know, Cool Beauty, that one comes from the Summertime Folka and Citra, and the Beach Girls comes from the Summertime Fid, Summertime Lid, and Fina. And they're very similar. They have 60% to 3 different elements, and they're slightly different from this one. So look out for those. Anything with 50% or higher to 3 different elemental resistances is a really good STMR to pick up. Winged Heart is a really fantastic STMR. It comes from the 7-star version of Renoa. So again, this is one that you may have a ton of Renoas just stashed in your inventory or in your reserves, and you didn't even realize you have them. You should definitely be fusing those up to get as many of these as you can, because it has 60% resistances to 4 elements. And fire, ice, lightning, those are very, very common elements that bosses use in the game. So having those right off the bat is great, but then throws in a little bit of wind to go with it. If you use it with Luka's Valentine's recipe, you have 120% wind resistance right there, which is really, really nice. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a really powerful STMR. It also gives status ailment resistance, which can be very, very important if you're going up against bosses that throw ailments at you, or bosses that reduce your ailment resistance, and so you have to keep your ailment buffs up. And so having something that just automatically makes the whole ailment resistance, sort of takes that out of the equation, is really nice on top of the elemental resistances. And then to add a little bit of extra, it gives you 50% charm resist. Now, it's not, you know, 100%. Would be great if it was 100%. But 50%, I mean, hey, 50% of the time, it works every time. So that's why Winged Heart makes my top 20 list. Shoreline, Fina, and Daisy, they've been out for a long time. So hopefully you've picked up at least one of these. You probably even have several copies lying around at this point in the game. And this one I think is really valuable for the guts that it provides. So the Never Ending Summer. It's nice because it gives you some HP. It's great for tanks or for any support unit because it provides HP and it's got a high flat spirit. But it's also really great because it comes with the 100% guts or escape death. And what's nice is that it has a 5% threshold where, a lot of units that have it innately, they, typically the threshold is at 1%. Sometimes it's at 30%, and this one's at 5%. So what's nice is you can actually stack those up and have multiple stacks of guts as long as they have different HP thresholds. And so this is a really, really great piece to have because you can pair this up with another STMR that provides guts at 1%, or you can use the generic vision card that supplies the guts at 30% HP, and so you can kind of pair those up. It's particularly useful in instances where your units are going to take a hit and might need guts in order to survive it. And so I think this one is really unique because it has that 5% threshold as opposed to the 1% threshold. And so it makes it possible to add up multiple stacks of guts. And that's why it makes my top 20 list. And speaking of guts, this is another nice STMR that comes from Chocobo Feather. This is a nice one to have multiple copies of because it does provide guts or that escape death, but it also has nice general stats, 45 to attack, mag, defense, and spirit. So it's actually very good to use on any unit. Good for physical DPS, mages, good for tanks and other support units. So it's kind of universal in its use, and it does have that escape death, and this one is at the 1% threshold. So we just talked about the Midsummer Boater, which has the threshold at 5%. And so you put those two together, you put this one and the Midsummer Boater together, and you effectively have 2 stacks of escape death. All right. Now, it is important to understand that it doesn't mean that you're going to resist death twice in the same turn. It just means that once you've used up one and you heal yourself back up, you'll get one more stack of guts on the following turn. So it won't necessarily work on the same turn unless it says it stops at that threshold, but usually it stops with 1 HP. It also comes with some LB fill, which is kind of nice. So if you need a little bit of extra LB fill on your unit, and also some MP refresh. So it comes with a couple of extra little perks just to add a cherry on top. All right, and it's a fairly easily acquirable STMR because Chocobo Feather is a 7-star max unit. You can UOC her, and you probably have a bunch. Again, similar to some of these other units, you might even have tons of them in your inventory already from just 5 stars that you've collected. So go check through your inventory and see how many of these you can fuse up and get and add these up to your inventory. Very, very useful. Expecting to see this one on the list. This one is a highly coveted STMR. Comes from Yeti of Narsh Umaro. And this one's got a lot of really cool things going on. So, the thing that it is notorious for is the countering, physical or magic attacks with a 30% success rate. And you can double these up. You know, it's an accessory, so you can equip 2 of them on a unit, and that does increase their counter rate significantly. And what's great is that it adds counters to both physical and magic attacks. Some other sources of counter only will do physical attacks, or maybe only do magic attacks. This one's great because it does both. And so you've probably seen this used to great effect on units like Chow or Sylvie to proc their counters in certain situations. And so it's a very, very useful STMR to have. You should definitely try to get at least 1 of them, if not 2. And you know, to boot, on top of all that, it comes with some fire and ice resist, and 50% resist to ice. That's pretty nice. And then probably the neatest thing about it is you see that it nulls death, so it has a resist death attached to it, which is very nice because there's actually sort of a limited number of death resist items in this game. Another good STMR that has death resist would be Wildcard Ace's STMR, the Vermilion Flag. That's another easily acquirable resist death piece of gear. It didn't make this list, but you know, in case you're wondering, that's one you can get. And then you've got Genji Shield and Safety Bit, which you can buy using star quartz in the game. But yeah, I mean, other than that, there aren't too many sources of resist death. So for that reason, with all of this going on in this one accessory, this definitely deserves to be on the top 20 list. Weapons Specialist is one of those that I definitely have multiple copies of. There's kind of a rule of thumb that I use, similar to the Elemental Resist, but the rule of thumb with killer gear and killer Materias is if it has 3 killers on it at 50% or higher, you definitely want that. All right, if it has 2 killers at 75% or higher, you definitely want that. And if it has 1 killer at 100% or higher, you definitely want that. So that's sort of the rule of thumb: the 350, 275, and the 100. Weapons Specialist is one of only a few Materias that go above and beyond that rule of thumb in having 3 killers at 75%. And Avian, Stone, and Human, you know, I would say Stone and Avian aren't as common enemy types, but we do have a Stone boss coming up in Clash of Wills this month, so this may be one you want to look out for. Humans are definitely more common, and so having a nice source of 75% human killer is really good to have. And then it gives you 60% attack on top of all that. And so Weapon Specialist is one of 2 killer Materias. I'm actually going to do a 2-for-1 in this particular one. So it's one of 2 Materias that kind of break the golden rule and go above and beyond. And so the other being, we are going to do, let's look it up. That would be Irvine. Right, Irvine. Oh, there he is. All right, you probably saw this one coming. Valued Memories, which gives 100% killers to Beast and Machine. And so that's really, really nice. On top of that, it also gives you 50% true double hand. And so that's a nice little perk on top of everything. So yeah, Weapon Specialist and Valued Memories, definitely some really nice STMRs as far as killers go that you should definitely try to have in your inventory, because I've used them on multiple occasions, and having multiples of them is really, really useful in instances where these killers become necessary. I also want to point out that we have the collaboration event coming out this week with the Legend of Mana. The unit Flammy is going to be in the 5-star pool on that banner, and Flammy has another STMR with 3 killers at 75%. I believe it's Beast, Dragon, Fairy. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. I don't own it personally, but I might actually have to throw some tickets at the banner to try and get a Flammy so that I can use an STMR removal on it. It is a highly sought after STMR. A lot of people are sad that they missed it when it came around, when the mana banners came out for the first time, and I was one of those that missed it, and I regret missing it. So I think I might have to try and pull a Flammy just so I can get that STMR, because yeah, having 3 killers at 75%, very, very nice. And that's why these two make my top 20 list. Staying on the subject of killers, killer gear and killer Materias. So Nomad's necklace is definitely one of my favorites. Comes from Sky, the Neovision Sky, and it's nice because it has a really high attack. So it's mainly for physical damage dealers, of course, but with a 65 flat attack stat, that is quite nice. And it comes with 2 killers. Whoop, why did that do that? All right, so it comes with Dragon and Reaper killer, and Reaper is a little bit more rare than Dragon, I would say, but still having 2 killers on an accessory with really high attack, that's very nice. The jump damage boost, that's essentially ignorable, but the killers are what you're really after. And every time I pull a Sky, and I've pulled a lot because, just over time, she's kind of trolled me a little bit, but I've got so many copies of Sky lying around, but every time I get one, I throw an STMR Moogle at it, because man, this is a really, really nice STMR to have for the killers and the high attack stat on it. So you're not having to sacrifice a whole lot of attack on your physical damage dealers just to slot the killers in. And so this one definitely makes my top 20 list. All right, now talk about killers. Scanning goggles is an old STMR, and when it first came out, man, like everybody wanted it. It was like, oh man, this is so great. It's like at the time, 52 attack on a hat was huge. It was the highest attack hat, I think, at the time when it came out. But then it comes with 4 killers on it, 4 50% killers, and a lot of them at the time especially were very rare, like Plant and Bug Killer are still pretty rare, but at the time Stone Killer was also very, very rare. And so it's got 50% Plant Killer, Stone Killer, Bug Killer, Machine Killer. This is a very nice STMR still to this day, even though it's got the lower attack value. Sometimes sacrificing that attack on a piece of equipment is definitely worth it, especially if 2 of the killers, if you're going up against a dual race boss and both of the killers line up with the killers on this hat, it can easily outcompete some of the higher attack hats and helms that are out there. And so I still think this STMR is very valuable and should definitely you should definitely have 1 or 2 in your inventory. It comes from Eileen, the 7-star Eileen. She's an incredibly old unit. You probably have a ton of them in your inventory piling up, so definitely fuse those together and grab yourself some scanning goggles. Man, Guy's Belt is a very, very sneaky little STMR. So, Guy is a 3-star. He's a 3-star base, but he got an NVA. An NV Awakening recently, and so when he got his NV Awakening, of course you have to get them to 7-star before you can awaken them, which means he got an STMR. And man, this STMR is surprisingly powerful. So it's got you could say it's got a low attack set at only 45, but the fact that it has any attack on it at all when it's sort of meant for a tank unit is very nice. And so it's got 55 defense on it as well. And you look what it comes with, 100% HP. I mean, first of all, you look at that 100% HP passive right there. That is awesome. That alone makes me want multiple copies of this, because if you have bosses or trials where you need to really beef up all your units and you really need to get their HP high, think about like the Death Machine trial where the damage is fixed and you want to make sure everybody has really high HP to try and survive all the fixed damage. STMRs like this are huge, and it's stackable, so you can put 2 of them on there and boom, you got 200% HP right there. So having multiples of this one is definitely recommended. I believe Gumi did say that they're going to add these units like Guy that get their Neovision Awakenings back into the generic pool. For a long time, you couldn't actually summon Guy. He was taken out of the pool. They were trying to, reduce the bloat on the pool. Makes no sense why they would do that for 3-star units, especially knowing that they were going to get NVAs in the future anyways. Seems kind of like BS move to me, but they are going to add them back in, so we should start being able to summon more of these, and I would definitely get more. And so I know I talked a lot about the HP, but it also comes with Maneater, a 75% Maneater. It's very, very sneaky, but wow, 75% Maneater on this, along with the 100% HP and a pretty decent attack stat. 45 is, you're not sacrificing a whole lot of attack to put this on a unit if you're needing to gear for killers. So Guy's Belt, definitely a really great STMR to have in your inventory. So Taivas' Spirit is definitely, one of those that you really want to have at least one of, I think, in your inventory, because man, it is so powerful and so useful on so many units. Taivas is probably the last person that you want to use this on, because there are so many better choices. This works really well on units that don't already have an LB modifier boost in their kit, because it only lasts for 2 turns, so you have to use it on 1 turn, and then you use your LB the next turn, and then the mod boost is gone. And so, a lot of units that have the LB mod boosts in their kit can't take advantage of this, so, you forget that. But you have units like Chizuru and Sky that really want to use this, because they have multiple part LBs and can thus double dip, turning that 3,000 added damage to 6,000 added damage, or a 30x mod to a 60x modifier boost, and that's really, really big. It also comes with some nice LB fill. Gives you an LB damage boost, 250%, which is nothing to sneeze at. The 300% attack boost, that's whatever. Most units have that or better in their kit already. But yeah, that mod boost is huge, and that can really mean the difference between, doing the damage that you want and not, especially in events like Clash of Wills, where maybe you're struggling to reach the damage cap, and you're almost there, and you just need that extra little push of damage, and Taivas' Spirit could be that difference between hitting the damage cap and not hitting the damage cap. And so I think it's a really, really useful skill to have. It's a really nice STMR. I don't know that I'd necessarily go out of my way to pull multiple copies of it, but definitely I'd say you want at least one of these in your inventory. So if you ever pull a Taivas, this is definitely worth an STMR move. Orange Jakkasaet, I'm just trying to pronounce that correctly. This one is included because it is, aside from the Clash of Wills regalia, it is the highest attack chest piece in the game currently, and so it's definitely one that you should keep an eye out for. If you ever pull a Neovision Nylika, I believe that's how that's pronounced, I'm not sure. Some of these names, the Nordic names, I try, but man, I'm sure I am butchering them. But if you ever pull one, definitely could be worth an STMR move to get this piece of armor, especially if you don't have the Clash of Wills gear and you're really struggling. That 150 flat attack, especially when you account for TDH bonuses, that can make a huge difference in your damage output, because the next best thing is again, besides the Clash of Wills gear, is Sephiroth's coat, right, which has 80 attack, and so this has an extra 70 attack higher than Sephiroth's coat. And so if you take that 70 and you add in the TDH bonus, which is 400%, right? So that's an extra 350 attack. That is pretty big, and that's going to make a big difference in your damage output. So I think it's a pretty important STMR to look out for. If you have, if you pulled an Ilika, but you're like, whatever, the unit's trash, so I didn't even bother looking at it. Look at it and take a look at that STMR, because it might be worth throwing a Moogle at it. It also comes with 100% LB fill rate boost, which, I mean, that's nice. Just a little extra cherry on top there. All right. So Ashe's leg armor comes from the new Neovision Ashe, the Dynast King's Scion Ashe. Oh my gosh, those names, mouthful. And I'm putting this one in here because it is the highest flat mag on an accessory in the game currently, which is very, very useful for, of course, mages and magic damage dealers. On top of that, it also gives you 80 spirit and 32 defense. Now, the big drawback to this, it's nice that it's an accessory, but it is exclusive to females. I will say there seem to be a lot more female mages out there, but if you're using Beach Blaster Olive, for example, this one is great on Beach Blaster Olive. And it also comes with the MP cost reduction of 30%, which is, very useful, especially in trials where there's a lot of MP drain and maybe your MP refresh isn't, keeping up with the MP drains. Having that 30% MP reduction could potentially mean the difference in being able to cast a spell or not on a particular turn. Right? So I think this is a very, very useful STMR, even though it is exclusive to females. I don't like that part of it. I wish everybody could use it, but I still think it's a very, very powerful STMR and worth having in your inventory. So Avalanche Tifa has been out for quite a while. One of the first premium Neovision units alongside Sephiroth and Cetra Descendant Aerith, and she still has one of the best STMRs for physical damage units. So I just talked about Ashe's leg armor being great for mages. Well, this one is great for physical DPS units. Still one of the highest attack accessories in the game at 82 attack. Really nice. Even comes with null charm, which can be very, very useful in certain trials and situations where charm is one of those incoming ailments. You don't have a lot of gear or materia out there that take care of charm resistance, and if you don't have a support unit in your team that is going to be helping you out with that, well, then you're going to want that on a piece of gear. Very, very useful, of course, for like the Rafflesia trial, which uses charm, and maybe you don't necessarily want to bring somebody or you don't have room in your team to cover the charm resistance. This takes care of that for you and still brings a buttload of flat attack. Even brings some defense and spirit, which is really, really nice. So it still makes my list of top 20 STMRs. So I mentioned Beach Babe Olive when I was talking about Ashe's leg guards, and so nice segue into Beach Blaster Olive's STMR, which is Summer Sparky. It seems like every time Olive comes out, her STMR is always a version of Sparky, and it's always really strong, and everyone always wants Sparky. Whether it was the original Sparky or the Black Sparky, and now the Summer Sparky, it's one of those that's usually highly sought after, and this one is no different. Guns still have some of the best average and high-end damage variants in the game, so they're definitely on average doing better than most other weapons in the game out there. And so having this, now that mages have damage variants on their weapons, they can take advantage of the higher variants that guns bring to the game. And I'll mention it in my TMR section, but Olive's TMR allows anybody to equip Summer Sparky if they can't innately equip guns. And so putting this on a mage can really increase the damage output over using a rod, for example. And it's got 240 flat mag. That is just impressive. Now, of course, on top of that, it does come with something for Olive, of course, some flat stats for Olive. But for anybody, this is massive, 150 mag TDH. And so, you know, if that alone doesn't already cap their mag TDH, you're already, you know, a significant way to getting there just by equipping this weapon. And then to boot, to add a little bit of cherry on top, it's got 2 killers, Beast Killer and Machine Killer. That is really nice. And so I definitely recommend, if you have a Beach Blaster Olive, or if you've pulled multiple Beach Blaster Olives, I would definitely recommend Moogling a couple of these. One for Olive herself, of course, and then another one for other mages, especially if you're really into dark visions. For mag stages, you want to have a bunch of these to throw on your mages so that they are all dealing the highest possible magic damage with the highest variance that you can get out of them. So Summer Sparky, once again, Sparky is you know, creating Sparky mania. Everybody wants Sparky, and for good reason. It's a really great STMR, and I highly recommend you pick up multiple copies of this one. All right, so the first on the top 10 TMR list, since we ended with Summer Sparky, we might as well start with Gunner on Vacation, which is Beach Blaster Olive's TMR. This one is really great. And especially, you know, going with Summer Sparky, because it gives you 60% mag, 50% LB damage, and then of course it allows whoever you've equipped this to then equip a gun. So this of course goes hand in hand with Summer Sparky. If you want to equip another mage on your team with Summer Sparky and they can't innately equip guns, which is, you know, it's fairly common for mages in this game not to be able to equip guns. So having this to go with it is huge. And this is a really valuable TMR to have, especially if you have multiple Summer Sparkies. Even if you only have one Summer Sparky and one of these, maybe you're going into a situation where Olive just isn't working for whatever reason, or, you know, can't survive because Olive is pretty squishy. You want to equip another mage that's going to be better fit for the fight. Boom, you take this one, equip Summer Sparky, and you're off to the races. So this one definitely makes the top TMR list. I've got Earthbreaker listed here, but honestly, any of the breaker Materias I think are definitely worth throwing TMR Moogles at. So if you ever pull one of the units that has one of these breakers on it, definitely pick it up right away. So Earthbreaker comes from Neovision Tulian, and all the breaker Materias do the same thing basically. So it gives you this cooldown ability that does an 85% full break to all enemies, and it comes with a 130% imperil to, you know, the specific element that it's attributed to. So Tulian's, of course, comes with an Earth imperil with the 85% full break. We've got, let's see, who else do we have that has the breaker one? We've got there's that Axstar variant. I'm going to try and show these to you real quick. Yeah, there we go. Darkbreaker, which comes with Axstar, the Return. So similar thing, does the 85% full break with 130% Dark Imperil. Now you notice that the cooldowns on these are 5 turns, but the breaks only last for 3 turns. What's really neat is that, you know, if you equip 2 of these, then you can basically keep full uptime on the 85% breaks, because you use one, and then, you know, after 3 turns, when that runs out, you use the other one, and by the time that one runs out, the other cooldown has refreshed, and you can just kind of swap back and forth every 3 turns, and so that makes it convenient. Now, it is important to remember that these can only be equipped to breaker units, so the unit has to have a breaker tag, which is that little down arrow you see underneath Axstar. I'm going to make him do a little animation there where it says type, and then it has the downward arrow. Only units that have that downward arrow in there underneath their sprite can equip these breaker Materias. Now I believe Reagan the Return also has, he has the light variant. I'm just going to show that to you real quick. Light breaker. Cool, that's not what I want. We're looking at TMRs. All right, so this one has 85% full break with 130% light imperil. Again, can only be equipped to breakers. And then the last one that I can think of comes from Neovision Edge. It's the only one that doesn't have the word breaker in the name. It's called Numbing Thunderbind, but it does the exact same thing. 85% full break, 130% lightning imperil. So those are the only 4 that I know of off the top of my head. If you know of others that I'm not familiar with, please leave a comment in the comments below to let me know any other breaker Materias that you know of. All right, but those I think are very, very important to have. So if you pull any of these units, definitely Moogle those right away because they can be very, very useful in certain situations. Dark Fiend and the Warrior's Prayer comes with this absurd TMR that it's fantastic on support units. Now, it is exclusive to support units, which means they have to have that little up arrow. So, you know, we talked about the breaker units just a moment ago having the down arrow in the type. So they do have to have that up arrow in the type to equip this. But man, it comes with 3,000 flat HP, 70 spirit, and 200% HP. Like that is just huge. And so I think that's really impressive. And then to, you know, top it all off, 30% resists to wind, earth, light, and dark. Really, really powerful TMR. Definitely Moogle this right away if you ever pull one of these. Moogle, you know, multiple copies of them, I think, because they're great for your support units. Maybe, you know, when I say multiple, maybe 2 is probably the best, because, you know, when are you really going to bring more than 2 support units? However, there are a lot of really great damage dealers like Chizuru. They can equip this in her normal form. Tsukiko can also equip this in her normal form. So if you're trying to build, like, you know, your DPS units where they're really bulky in one form and then, you know, all the damage in the other one, this can really come in handy, especially on units like Chizuru and Tsukiko. So do keep that in mind. I definitely think it's worth having a few copies of this one. It's a great TMR. Sword of Light is, at first glance, when you look at it, you're probably thinking, why in the world is this on my top 10 TMR list? And it's not for, you know, the stock version of it, but having one of these is very important because it can be upgraded using upgrades from the Chronicle battles from the, you know, Final Fantasy 1. You can go in the Chronicle battles and you can upgrade this thing and it becomes incredibly powerful for tank units. So here's the upgraded version up to +4. You notice that defense on it is 227. That is impressive. And then on top of that, it also gives you 50% defense. That's pretty nice. Yeah, and then equipped to tank units, which, I mean, really, you're not going to equip this to anybody except your tank units. To tank units, it gives you an extra, let me swipe over. It gives your tanks an extra 500 flat defense and 100% TDH defense, which is right, or I should say true single wield defense. That's what you want. You don't want TDH because you're not just equipping or wielding a sword. So it gives you true single wield defense. And that is really, really helpful for really bulking up your tanks. You've probably seen me use this on Runda. On pretty much all of my Runda builds, this is what is in that slot. I've used it on Esther multiple times when I've used her as a physical tank. This is a really, really great item to have, or a weapon to have for your tanks. And so it's a really easily acquirable TMR, and then you just have to do the farming in the Chronicle battle in order to upgrade it to +4. You can only upgrade one, I'm pretty sure. You can only upgrade one of these, but that's really all you need because you're not going to be bringing multiple tanks into a fight. But definitely put this on your priority list of TMRs to acquire. So Light's Vengeance is one of those TMRs that I think is still honestly very useful even today, just for, you know, bulking up your units, especially in cases where they're going to be taking damage that is unavoidable. And it comes with 40% HP. It's one of the, you know, the higher HP Materias that you can get in the game. The 30% mag is whatever. The 30% spirit, however, can be very helpful, again, in making sure that your units are bulky and able to survive, especially if it's unavoidable magic damage. So I think this is a pretty useful TMR to still have in the kit. All right, sweet Luka, she's got something on both lists here, because man, even her TMR I think is really great. So, you know, ideal for tanks or support units, or just bulking up units in, you know, one form if they have a role shifting Neovision form. Really great because it comes with, you know, lots of HP, 30% HP on it, 300 flat HP, and then some decent defense and spirit on there, and a little bit of water resist. So this is a really great one to have multiples because it's an accessory, so you can throw 2 of these on your unit to really help bulk them up if you need them bulky for in certain situations. So I have a lot of these. I've acquired probably too many of these, but I think they are very useful and a nice TMR to have just for adding bulk to your team. So Blue Wave is one of those really cool abilities that I wish they would do more of. This comes from High Summon Nebraska. There is a similar ability that comes from, I believe it's Leftia, that does a similar ability, but it's fire elemental. And I really wish they would do more of these for each of the different elements. Like, if we had one of these for each of the different elements, that would be so great. Because what this does is it's a single ability that does a triple bolting strike chain with a specific element attached. And so this one is water element. Lefty is, like I said, is fire element. And this can be really useful on support units that don't normally have anything to do on turns where you're maybe doing a burst, or maybe you're trying to finish off the boss. Maybe you're trying to hit the chain cap maybe you're trying to hit that 100 chain score in things like Clash of Wills and Dark Visions. And having something like this on your support units can really make the difference in certain situations. I've used this one so many times, especially on units like Crescent. You know, Crescent doesn't really have a whole lot of damage skills in his kit, except for a Chaos Chain Awakened skill. And so having this attached to a unit like Crescent makes him even more valuable in a fight. And so I think these are really great to have. Like I said, this one comes from High Summon Nebraska. Lefty's got the fire version. We really need more of these in different elemental varieties. I wish Gumi or Alum, whoever's going to be doing more units like these, we need more abilities like this one. This is such a cool ability, and I wish we had more to use for our support units. But definitely grab Blue Wave or the fire version from Leftia. Really nice ability to have. All right, so I mentioned this at the beginning of my top 20 STMR list as one of those sort of crucial pieces to making a unit full passive provoke, as well as helping increase their evasion. And I think it's a really great piece. It's sort of one of those integral pieces in making your unit fully passive provoke with some nice evasion thrown in on top. And so, like I said, if you add this to Durandal with the Moogle charm, you've got a unit with 100% passive provoke, and 50% physical evasion right off the bat. I've definitely used this on multiple occasions to do passive provoke units without relying on the Dancer's Diadem, the Dancer's Diadem of Will, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that particular piece of Clash of Will gear. And so really, really nice little piece of gear here. And easily acquirable. Avalanche Jessie is a 7-star unit, so should be plenty floating around out there. Throw a TMR Moogle at it, definitely worth having. Alright, I still think Colorful Lay is a really important one to have. Mostly, again, for like doing evasion builds, because it does 25% evasion on an accessory. Easily acquirable. Aloha Laswell, 5-star base. You probably have a lot floating around out there. So you do 2 of these, and boom, you got 50% evasion on your unit right there. So really nice for having evasion builds. Also comes with some TDW. Now, of course, TDW's kind of fallen out of the meta, but it might, who knows? It might come back again. And so having these on hand, definitely not a bad thing. And comes with 45 attack. So I still have a bunch of these lying around. And if you ever need to do a full evasion team, these can really come in handy. So I'd say pick up a couple of these. Definitely if you pull a Aloha Laswell, and you got a bunch of TMR Moogles lying around, might be worth it to throw one at it. Now, I'm only bringing this one up. It is a limited item, and I know I said I was going to stay away from limited stuff, but we do have Halloween coming up this month, and I'm almost positive that we will be able to pull Godria amongst all the other 5-star Halloween units. I'm almost positive you will be able to pull these on the Halloween banners coming up later this month, and I think her TMR is honestly still one of the nicest TMRs for the killers that come with it. I've still used these in cases where I need the killer. So it's got pretty low attack, 40 attack, but that's okay because it also comes with, if it'll let me do it, it'll come with 50% TDH, which could be very useful on your physical damage units, but it comes with Fairy and Reaper Killer, and Fairy is one of those ones that is still fairly rare in the game. So that alone is really, really nice. And then the Reaper Killer to go with it. I've definitely, every time Halloween comes around and I pull Godrias, I TMR Moogle these. So I have a bunch of them. And there have been cases where I've used all my Photon Cores on my team just to get the killers I need, especially the Fairy Killers. So this is a really nice TMR. And if we get a chance to pull Godria again this month coming up for Halloween, definitely save some TMR Moogles and throw them at your Godrias. I think this is still a really, really great TMR. All right, so there you go. There's my top 20 STMRs and my top 10 TMRs. I hope this was helpful to you. Maybe there were some things in there you didn't realize you had. You're like, oh man, I gotta go, grab me a few of those. If there are some STMRs and TMRs that you think should have been on this list, definitely mention it in the comments below. I want this to be a great resource for people to come in and see, if you're like, oh man, this STMR should have been on there because it has this and this and this. Definitely, let's get the discussion going, ramp it up. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Tell me what should have been on this list. And that all that does is that helps make this a useful resource for people to come in and see what is good in this game and what they should be focusing on. If you disagree with anything that's on the list, definitely let me know that too. I am happy to engage in some civil debate. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Stay tuned. Next week I'll try to get out my top 20 vision cards. I might not be able to actually make 20 top vision cards. That ends up being it's a little bit more difficult to narrow it. Not to narrow it, but to actually find 20 vision cards that are worth being on the list. But I'm going to do my best to get that out to you guys next week. And so thank you so much for following me, and I will see you on the other side.